And the best teaching partner in the world, Mr. Zachary, is up there too. So, yeah. Awesome. So we always have to do some important thank yous up here. I know you guys know this, but I don't think we can say it enough. Everything that goes behind putting Writers Week on. So first of all, if your parents are boosters, please tell your parents thank you, because without the help of the boosters, Writers Week would never ever happen. So hug your parents, it'll freak them out, and just thank them for what they do for boosters. I always like to make sure we thank the tech crew, because we can't do what we do without them, so please thank the tech crew right now. And Mrs. Klingner and Mr. Crash, who are in charge of tech crew, we want to thank them for what they do as well. What else here? Oh, you all need to thank yourselves. So give yourselves a round of applause right now, you all. Right. Because we would not have Writers Week if you guys did not participate fully and were so wonderful and interested in all the writers we have here. So I appreciate the fact that you guys are awesome. In fact, I was just telling our next guest how awesome you are, so I was not lying about that. And then my last thank you is I always have to make a shout out to Mr. Anderson and Mrs. Zank, who put all this together and would never happen without them, so yeah. All right, our presenter this hour, I'm very excited to introduce to you guys Adib Karam. He is an author, a graphic designer, and a tea enthusiast who also apparently makes amazing macaroni and cheese, although I haven't had any to know that for sure yet. He is visiting us from Kansas City, Missouri. His book is right up here, you can see it, and up on the screen. Darius the Great is Not Okay. It just recently won a very prestigious award called the Morris Award, so that's pretty cool. The Morris Award honors a book published by a first-time author writing for young teens, so it's a very prestigious award. Last year, in 2018, Adib was named one of the best young author writers for 2018 by Time Magazine, Wall Street Journal, the Boston Globe, BuzzFeed, Amazon, and many others. So he really was recognized as, you had a great year last year, apparently. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, pretty cool, right? And then the last thing I just want to share with you, after our presentation, if any of you are interested in buying a copy, we do have some copies of the Darius book up here for $18. So at the end, you can come on up, say hi to Adib, and buy a book. So without further ado, here is Adib.
Hi, how's it going? Thank you all for having me. This is a really amazing program, and my high school definitely didn't have anything like this going on. Usually if I go visit a school, I tell classes that they're welcome for me getting them out of class, but it seems like you all would already have been out of class anyway, so I have to thank you for bringing me here to talk about my book, which is Darius the Great is Not Okay. For anyone who doesn't know, like the one sentence story is that it's about an Iranian-American teenager named Darius Kellner who goes to Iran to visit his family for the first time. And yeah, it did like surprisingly well last year. I've always wanted to be on BuzzFeed, so that was super duper exciting. And lots of other good things happened too. But today I thought I would talk about how I got into writing and why I do what I do. And the short answer is I'm not entirely certain still, but we're going to try to unpack it together. Does anyone in here ever write? I assume since it's Writers Week, maybe everyone has to write this week. Y'all do like narrative projects? Do it for fun? Any fan fiction writers out there? Yes! Fun fact, I actually invented fan fiction when I was in middle school, so this was, I think, probably before most of you were born. I don't know, maybe some of you are like, doing that I'm actually an adult cop infiltrating a high school thing. I'm not going to judge. But you never know. Man, for the writers in here, like, when you start a story, why are you doing it? Why are you writing? What is it you're trying to say? Are you doing it for yourself or for others? I probably said this at some point because I put it in my presentation. I don't think I stole it from anyone, but obviously you should always attribute your sources. So I credited myself. It's not proper APA format or anything, but don't tell the professors. When I was in like 6th grade, I invented fan fiction, as I said, when I wrote a Lord of the Rings fan fiction. It was like 10 pages long, which I was certain was long enough to be published as a novel. And I showed it to my English teacher, and she said, "Wow, this is really good. Have you ever thought about writing something original?" And I was like, wow, like, as an adult looking back, I can be like, wow, that was like some really excellent shade. But by the time I was like, maybe. In 7th grade, our school district got a bunch of new computers and had to do something with all the old, very crappy computers. And like, we're talking like black monitors with orange text. All they could do was word process. I don't know if any of you know what a dot matrix printer is, but they're the ones that go as they print. We had one of those. So they stuck them all in the computer lab and told us we could go and write on them because that's literally all we could do. And so me and a bunch of my friends went and started writing stories, and they were original in that they were essentially self-insertion fan fictions starring me and my friends in various science fiction settings. I don't know, so that's progress, I guess. After middle school, when I was in high school, I fell into the world of theater, and I was a techie. Thanks to all the techies for making all this work, by the way. It's rare that I go in and everything just works without having to fix it myself, because I'm also a techie, and usually I have to fix things. So this was really nice. But throughout high school and then into college, as I was studying theater, I also kept writing, mostly for me, mostly for enjoyment. Things kind of started getting less fan fiction-y, but really not. And then, when I was in college, the Lord of the Rings films came out. Has anyone ever seen any of the Lord of the Rings movies? They're so good. I was convinced after seeing them that I wanted to be a filmmaker. And so I went to film school and learned that I did not want to be a filmmaker. You have like no creative control at all in movies. But I did really like my screenwriting classes. And after I moved back home to Kansas City and started working, actually doing tech theater, basically, I kept writing for myself. And I tried writing a screenplay and realized that I also didn't really like writing screenplays. Not that screenplays aren't awesome. I heard your previous speaker talking about how excellent screenplays are, except it sounds like she actually hates writing them too, so maybe she and I are pretty similar on that front. But I really liked writing books. And I wrote a bunch of very, very bad books. They're all hidden in a trunk under my bed. But I kind of had an epiphany as I was writing this book in particular, which is that I was writing to express things that were bothering me. And the thing that was bothering me was that when I was growing up, I didn't really get to see myself in any books, because all the books I read, all the media I was consuming was kind of overwhelmingly white. There weren't any Iranians, or when there were, we tended to be terrorists or like quirky neighbors, at best. And so at the end of the day, I was writing for young me. Like as I said, growing up, like I didn't see myself in any books. These are all, I just hated all of these. These were all my assigned books in 9th grade. Actually, no, there was one more. My least favorite book of all time. Has anyone ever read A Separate Piece? Has anyone ever pushed a friend out of a tree? Okay, I hear the English teachers laughing. Some of you had to read this book. I loathe this book. This book made me hate reading for a really long time. That's why I'm such a big fan of self-selected reading. Picking books that you connect with, because I had never been to a boarding school. I had never pushed anyone out of a tree, like friend or foe. And I've never chased a whale. Never walked around with an albatross around my neck. These are all really great literary references. So I guess it did. I guess the assigned reading did in fact work. But yeah, I just felt like I couldn't connect with anything, and I wanted to read more about people like me. And does anyone else have books that they just loathe, that they want to shout out at me? Because I would be very amused. Hamlet. Oh, nice. I see. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Interesting. Okay. It sounds. Okay. Yeah. This is great. Oh, man. Oh, I heard someone say Catcher in the Rye. That's another, yeah. Good grief. All right. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. This is excellent. Okay. Good. So it sounds like you all have your pain points, is what I'm getting. And my goodness. Oh, okay. We better bring it down before your English teachers chase me out of here. Hopefully they won't. So yeah, reading is such a personal thing, and writing is such a personal thing that it's weird when we expect everyone to connect with all the classics. Yeah, and that's not to shame anyone. There are people who do like a separate piece, and there are, as much as I hate Catcher in the Rye, and it sounds like someone out here hates Catcher in the Rye, there are lots of people I respect a great deal who absolutely love it. I also feel like it's really important to never shame people for liking things they like. So like no shame meant toward anyone who likes things that I don't like, because that's what's really cool about art, even though I'm technically right and they're technically wrong. But as I got into writing, I ended up having to get more into reading, because I believe you cannot write if you can't read. And so I had to read a lot of books. The very first novel-length book I actually wrote that was original and not fan fiction was like a steampunky sci-fi. But that was absolutely, I heard, yeah, see? It's fun. It is a great genre, and I'm very bad at it. So I ended up gravitating toward young adult literature because, as I said earlier, I just never got to see myself in anything, and I kind of wanted to write for that. And so I found books I did connect with. Aristotle and Dante discovered the secrets of the universe. If You Could Be Mine, which was like the first young adult novel I think I'd ever read with Iranians in it. Simon versus the Homo sapiens, Agenda, a favorite, and I'll Give You the Sun, which I'm still just really mad at how good it is. Yes, they're all super queer. Thank you. What a surprise. But for the first time, I really felt like books were talking to me. Does anyone else ever pick up a book and get to see themselves in it and be like, wow, reading is actually not awful? Anyone? I hear some nods, some murmurs. I see some hands. Yeah. Does anyone want to shout a book that they really loved and connected with? No pressure. Okay. Ooh, I love Where the Wild Things Are. Did I hear someone scream Hamlet? No, that's really cool. I'm fascinated. Did your uncle kill your father and marry your mother? Okay, that just goes to show you how timeless Shakespeare is. That people are still out there murdering their brothers and marrying their sisters-in-laws and, taking over the thrones of Denmark. Right, fun fact, that's actually what Brexit was all about. So this is, again, I've attributed it to myself because it sounds really smart. I actually think this is paraphrasing what one of my college theater professors said. But stories let us write about things that are too big to just talk about. And as I said, I often come at books with a question or a problem I can't solve. For Darius, one of the questions I was asking is, what does it mean to grow up as a member of a diaspora? My father moved to the United States from Iran in the 70s to go to college. My mom is a white American kind of Missouri mixture. I imagine you all have something similar here in Illinois. Just kind of nondescript white. But growing up, I got ostracized a lot. I think I was either 4 or 5 the first time someone called me a dweeb instead of a deeb, which, when you're 4 years old, that's really devastating. And when people kept doing that in high school, I was like, really? You can't do better than a 4-year-old? I don't know, work on your insult game. But that was one of the questions I was asking and grappling with. I was also asking questions of what it's like to grow up with depression. Darius in the book also lives with depression, and that shaped my teenage years in ways that I'm kind of still unpacking. Other books I wrote were rage at our political system, or frustration with the way we put boys and kind of masculine behavior into boxes, and then tell them that it's wrong to examine their own feelings or to even have feelings. Yeah, I once wrote something, this is a trunk novel, kind of grappling with my sister's illness at one point. It was like very metaphorical and high concept, and it was just a dumpster fire. It was like a fusion of dystopian and cyclit. Does anyone know what cyclit is? Does everyone know what dystopian is, like the Hunger Games? Okay, cyclit is like The Fault in Our Stars. So like imagine how dumpster fire they would be if mashed up. And yeah, even the stuff I'm working on now, which I can't really talk about, but it's all stuff I'm grappling with. Questions about what it means when you're growing up and find out that the thing that you thought you wanted, you don't want anymore. Did anyone else ever have that feeling? Like, you know, when you're like in middle school, you're like, I'm going to be an astronaut. And then you're in high school, you're like, no, I'm going to be a doctor. And then by the time you're like 10 minutes later, still in high school, you're like, no, that doesn't feel right either. Anyone ever have that feeling? Or is it just me? You can tell me if I'm a weirdo. I'm not, I have a thick skin. I'm just joking, I have a very thin skin. Please be nice to me. So yeah, like, I don't know. I still have lots of problems. Lots of neuroses I'm trying to unpack. But what I really love about writing is how it lets me connect with readers. This one is definitely not by me. It's by a Nobel laureate. In the end, stories are about one person saying to another, this is the way it feels to me. Can you understand what I'm saying? Does it feel that way to you? It's Kazuo Ishiguro. That was actually from the speech he gave when he won the Nobel Prize, which I'm told is very impressive. One of the great things about writing has been getting to meet readers who connected with what I wrote and felt the same way, whether they were kind of growing up as diaspora children, or whether they live with depression, or whether they just miss their family. That's actually been one of the things I've heard a lot, is people who live far away from their family saying, like, how much my book made them cry. And I was like, oh, thank you. It's all carefully planned. That's a joke. I have no idea what I'm doing. Sometimes people just want to know it's okay to feel things. Or they've laughed because there was something in the book that Darius thinks that they've thought themselves but never said out loud. As you were all, I think, in the thick of it, you can probably appreciate all the ridiculous ironies of being a teenager. You know, you tend to get treated like children and then expected to act like adults, and it can be really, really hard. At least that's how I felt. This is a quote from Udine Simmons Bishop that we kind of refer to a lot in writing. It's from a longer quote where she says, books are sometimes windows, offering views of worlds that may be real or imagined, familiar or strange. These windows are also sliding glass doors, and readers have only to walk through in imagination to become part of whatever world has been created and recreated by the author. When lighting conditions are just right, however, a window can also be a mirror. Literature transforms human experience and reflects it back to us. And in that reflection, we can see our own lives and experiences as part of the larger human experience. Reading then becomes a means of self-affirmation, and readers often seek their mirrors in books. This is something I think about a lot, and a lot of us writing for young readers think about this a lot, of how transformative reading can be, and by extension, how transformative writing can be, and the way it shapes us, and the way it shapes our readers, and the way it shapes us all together as humans. Has anyone ever read a book that kind of opened your eyes to like what a friend was experiencing, or what a classmate was experiencing, or what someone else far away in the world was experiencing that you'd never thought of before? Yes, I'm seeing some hands. Subtle nods, that's good. At the end of the day, that's kind of what it's about. Boy, I wish I could remember what I was supposed to talk about next. I'm kind of skipping ahead a little. This is another great quote, and it's something that I touched on a little earlier when I talked about how Iranians were always stereotypes or quirky neighbors. But Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie said, "The single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story." It's actually also a really great TED Talk. This is from her TED Talk. Does anyone know what TED Talks are? Is that still a thing? Good? Yeah, okay, I'm joking. I assumed everyone still knew what a TED Talk was. But yeah. Sorry, I had a brain fart. It's all good. You know, presenting is really hard. I'm sure any of you have to give like class presentations, you know. But that's something that I fight a lot in my work, is fighting against stereotypes. Does anyone else feel like they sometimes have to fight stereotypes in their life? I see some hands. Subtle nodding, whispers, perhaps a little snoozing. Am I running along? What time am I supposed to end, by the way? What time does this period end? 15? Okay, perfect. Okay, good. I feel like I've modulated myself well so that we'll have time for questions after. And so that leads me to We Need Diverse Books. Has anyone ever heard of this organization? I see a few hands. It was founded by Ellen O and Danielle Clayton and a group of authors who looked at kind of the body of kidlit, of children's literature, and said, wow, this is like overwhelmingly the same story. It's always about white people. And I was like, wow, yeah, like all of the books I can think of off the top of my head are by dead white men, except for To Kill a Mockingbird, which is by a dead white woman, which actually also, like, in the lens of today, has its own host of problems. Sorry, I know it's a very dearly held book to a lot of people, but it's not a favorite of mine. But that then put me into conversation of where my writing falls in the spectrum of trying to diversify books. Does anyone want to guess what race the protagonist of the first 4 books I wrote was? Spoiler alert, they were all white. I as a writer had erased myself from my own imagination. I thought only white people could be in books. And that takes a toll on you. That took a toll on me, and that still lasts to this day, which is probably why I write so many brownish people into my books. But we are seeing a sea change. We are seeing a tide turning. These are 3 books that all came out last year that are really awesome. Does anyone like fantasy? Okay. Black Wings Beating by Alex London. Super good fantasy. Takes place in a world where falconry is like commerce and warfare, and a twin brother and sister have to capture a ghost eagle to appease a warlord. It's full of brown people and queer people, and it's super awesome. And does anyone like science fiction? I hear some murmurings. Seafire. Did anyone see Mad Max Fury Road? Yeah. Seafire is basically Mad Max Fury Road, but on the high seas. It's about a group of an all-female pirate crew that has to take on an evil, despotic warlord that's kidnapped their brothers and enslaved them with a poisonous drug that makes them crazy and violent. Does anyone just like reading contemporary stories, like stories that take place in the real world? Yeah. Odd one out. Has anyone read Dear Martin? Okay, Nick Stone, yeah. This is her second book. Super good, about 3 friends trying to navigate what it means to be friends and what it means to be romantically entangled and what identity is. These are all books that feel fresh and new and different, and I get to see people like me, and I get to see people like my neighbors and my friends in. There's also some great books coming out this year that I've gotten to read early. As one of the perks of being an author is you get to read early copies of books. Actually, 2 of these are contemporary because I read a lot of contemporary. One, I Wish You All the Best, is about a non-binary teen that gets kicked out of their home after coming out, but kind of finds a new life and new happiness living with their sister. Technically, You Started It. It's about a nerdy girl and a bisexual boy falling in love over text message, even though it's a complete case of mistaken identity, and it's super hilarious. It also has a lot of digs at Canada. I don't know if anyone else likes making fun of Canada, but it's a lot of fun. And then A Place for Wolves. Does anyone reading thrillers or historical stories, or both? Yeah. So A Place for Wolves takes place in war-torn Kosovo, during the war back in the 90s. So these are all things I'm really excited for, and things that I think are opening up the world, and opening up readers' worlds, and opening up my world to experiences I didn't have but want to learn more about. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to questions from the audience, and please don't leave me standing here like Chris is tripping. Oh, Bob, thank you. Yeah. For real though, don't just leave me standing here, please. Any questions? Oh, I see a hand. Ha!
If you had to pick a book that everyone really likes that you secretly don't, and you know you would be really widely hated if you said you didn't like it, what would that book be?
Oh, I already said I hate To Kill a Mockingbird. Like, that's a big one. People are like, what? And I'm like, yeah. Yeah, and like Catcher in the Rye. Those are probably the two big ones that people like give me the most side eye for. Actually, I'm also not. I was also never really a big fan of Roald Dahl. Kind of like any of them. Like they didn't do it for me. All right. Yes. In the gray. Yes. In the gray hoodie. What books that everyone's fond of do I really enjoy? Someone mentioned Where the Wild Things Are earlier. I think it's a masterpiece. Has anyone read The Phantom Tollbooth? That's like my favorite book. As a child, I was crippled with ennui, and so I identify strongly with Milo, who's always bored. Yes, I see someone in a black t-shirt toward the back. Can you repeat that?
How do you deal with writer's block for long enough to actually finish a novel?
Ooh, how do I deal with writer's block? This is actually a two-part question, because I really feel like there are two-part answer. I really feel like there are two kinds of writer's block. And for me, one kind of writer's block is before I've started writing, and that usually means that I'm not ready to write, and I need to go out and experience the world and take in media and culture, whether that's going to a museum or like going to the zoo or like playing some Smash Brothers, watching a movie. Yes. Give me a shout if you're a Pikachu main. Really? This is an attack. Oh my gosh. But I like to call it filling your creative well, and I'm pretty sure I stole that phrase from someone, but I don't remember who. So if you invented that phrase, let me know and I'll attribute you. But the second kind of writer's block, and it sounds like this is what you're a little more concerned with, is once you're in the project and you don't know how to move forward. And I think everyone has different ways of dealing with that. And for me personally, when I find myself facing that kind of writer's block, it usually means that I've making a wrong turn somewhere in my writing, and I have to go back. I actually don't knit, but I have seen other people knit, so I'm going to use a knitting metaphor, which is that I've seen people who like knit and they like made a mistake in their knitting and they have to unravel the knitting to pull out the mistake and then start again. And that's what it feels like for me if I have writer's block, is that I have to go and figure out where the problem was, take that problem out, and then I can go forward again. Does that help any? Cool. Anyone else? I see a question here. What classics do I like? How does one define a classic? I mean, I really do like Lord of the Rings, and Hobbit. I actually like the Chronicles of Prydain more. Has anyone read Lloyd Alexander's Chronicles of Prydain? It's like a Welsh fantasy epic saga. What else? Actually, I really like Frankenstein. Man, I actually thought it was like philosophically very interesting to me. And part of that might just be that I read it when I was in college, and if I had read it when I was younger, I might not have appreciated it. I think our relationship to different books can change over the course of our lives too. But yeah, I'm still trash for Lord of the Rings. I read it every year. Yes. Do I like John Steinbeck? I thought The Grapes of Wrath was the most depressing thing I've ever read in my life. But I like that he was, so much of the literature that we read tends to be, especially from that time period, tends to be about rich people, and I like that he was writing about poor people instead. Yes, in the blue.
Besides yourself, who is your favorite
Oh God, that's like asking a teacher to pick their favorite student. That's like, okay, thank you. Like that was deeply funny. It's actually very weird. Now that I'm a writer, like now that I'm an author, and I like meet these authors I admire, and they're kind of colleagues in a way. So I'm not going to pick a favorite, but I will say that one person I admire and would like to emulate as much as I can is Laurie Halse Anderson, who wrote Speak, and is so cool. She is always willing to speak truth to power and always uses her position and privilege to lift up others and do good in the world. And I feel like that's a sterling example that I would like to follow. Also, she's just really, really cool. Like, how dare she be so cool? Yes?
Can you read us some of Darius the Great?
Oh, that was probably in the email I was originally sent too. That's really embarrassing. I completely forgot and I launched right in. I will read a little bit of the book. This is from chapter 2. Thank you for the reminder. Maybe I'll remember to do this at the beginning next time, but no promises. This is from chapter 2. The bike rack for the shops at Fairview Court was located at the far end of the shopping center, right outside one of those clothing stores that catered to soulless minions of orthodoxy, like Fatty Bulger and Chip Cusimano, the kind that had pictures of shirtless guys with abdomens that could only be expressed in integers. 5 different kinds of overpowering cologne waged war in my sinuses as I passed the store. When I made it out into the parking lot, the sun was still up, barely, but the mercury lights had come on. The air smelled dry and vacant after weeks of rain. I'd been riding my bike from Chapel Hill High School to the tea haven at the shops at Fairview Court ever since I got the job. It was easier than getting a ride from either of my parents. But when I got to the bike rack, my bicycle was gone. Upon closer inspection, that was not technically true. Only part of my bike was gone. The frame was there, but the wheels were missing. The bike slumped against the post, held on by my lock. The seat was missing too, and whoever had taken it had left some sort of blue blob in its place. Well, it was not a blue blob. It was a pair of blue rubber testicles. I had never seen blue rubber testicles before, but I knew right away where they had come from. Like I said, there was no zero-tolerance policy toward bullying at the shops at Fairview Court. There was one toward stealing, but apparently that didn't cover bicycle seats. My backpack sagged on my shoulders. I had to call my dad. Darius, is everything okay? Dad always said that. Not hi, Darius, but is everything okay? Hey, can you come pick me up from work? Did something happen? It was humiliating telling my father about the blue rubber testicles, especially because I knew he would laugh. Really? You mean like truck nuts? What are truck nuts? People hook them onto the hitch of their truck, so it looks like the truck has testicles. The back of my neck prickled. In the course of our phone call, my father and I had used the word testicles more than was healthy for any father-son relationship. Thank you. I usually read that segment because it gets a lot of laughs, because the word testicles is objectively a funny word. Yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. I'm really sorry I forgot earlier. I'm a disaster. It's fine. All right, any more questions? Oh, yes. Would I share any of my trunk pieces? I have, yes, like with my close writing friends. With you? Oh. No. I want to be able to sleep at night. No, they're bad. They're so bad. Some of them just are bad at a craft level, and some of them, like looking back, I can see that I wasn't in a good headspace. Some of them are like really dark and depressing, and I don't particularly want to go revisit that because I don't want to go back to that headspace. And some of them are just really, really embarrassing. But no, do you feel like that's the kind of thing people would enjoy?
We had a writer previously this week that shared her journals, so
Oh,
I was just curious.
okay. I will take it under consideration and ponder whether that's a useful thing to share. Yeah, thank you. Did I see someone in blue also has a question?
I was wondering, what's a non-binary?
Non-binary is for people with a gender identity that is neither strictly male nor strictly female. Yes, did I see a question up here in black? Yes. The Lord of the Rings series from Amazon? The movie series. I think the Lord of the Rings movies were great, and I think the Hobbit movies were less great. And I'm interested and cautiously optimistic about the Amazon series. Was there another question from this corner? No? Down front? Aha, down front. I have seen Love, Simon several times. I get to hang out with Becky Albertalli sometimes when we're at the same festival, and it's great because she's such a lovely human being. How dare she? Yes, in the white. The Silmarillion? Yes. I think it's absolutely fascinating, and it kind of reads like the Bible, except it's about the Lord of the Rings world, and I think that's absolutely fascinating, and I think it's really a tremendous work of creativity. Yes. I see another one in purple-ish.
You've talked about how your writing has changed over the years, but how has your reading changed, either what you take away from a book or your favorite genre of book?
How has my reading changed over the years? Growing up, when I did read, and as I said, I was turned off of reading by John Knowles, a separate piece. When I did read, it was usually fantasy or science fiction. I had a pretty rough battle with depression during my teenage years, and I still live with it now, but it's a lot less painful. But science fiction and fantasy were a big escape. Has anyone ever heard of, or does anyone like play Magic the Gathering? There used to be Magic the Gathering tie-in novels, and I just devoured those. Nowadays, a lot of what I'm reading, if it's for pleasure, I have like, I don't know, probably about 40 books on my shelf that I need to read, and so I'll be like, what do I feel like reading? And see what kind of mood I'm in. Sometimes my reading is kind of work related, and so I'll be reading to kind of keep up what's going on in my genre, or I'll be reading books by friends, or reading books that people have asked me to read and say nice things about if I like them. I don't know. Has anyone seen The Joy of Tidying Up with Marie Kondo? I'm at the point where I want to spend my time doing things that are fulfilling to me. And so I pretty quickly identify if a book isn't doing that for me, and I thank it and set it aside and pick something else. Because, I don't know, I have very little free time and free time for reading, and so I try to make every moment count.
There's a question all the way up here.
Ooh, I can't even see. It's so dark. Yes, go for a question.
So, what's your creative process like? You wake up early, is it like a wait all day kind of thing?
What's my creative process? So there are two creative processes, one for whether I'm at my day job, and then one for if I have the day off. When I'm at my day job, I actually spend a lot of time waiting for emails from clients. And so if I have a few spare minutes, I'll either A, check Twitter, or B, try to squeeze in some writing. And then I just have to kind of get in and go. And usually I'll put on some music that will get me in the mood and try to go. And kind of use whatever time I have wisely. On the days when I'm not at my day job, my day job is only part-time now because I can't juggle all the stuff I do. But on the days that I've specifically set aside for writing, I actually usually like to wake up about 7 a.m., which I feel like is not super early because there's a lot of writers that wake up at 5 and start writing. But I'm most creative in the afternoon. So I'll kind of do the things I need to do, like answer emails, go to the gym and all that in the morning. And then I'll have lunch, and then in the afternoon I'll make myself a cup of tea and go to my office and write for several hours. And I get a lot of good quality stuff done during that period. Yeah, I guess that's my process for now. It also has changed with each book I've written. Like the process is different. Yeah. Oh, yes. In the side? Yeah. Do I listen to audiobooks? Yes, all the time. I actually just finished listening to the audiobook of Odd One Out a couple days ago. And yes, there is an audiobook of Darius available as well. It's really, really well read, if I do say so myself. It's not read by me, thankfully, because I'm very bad at reading my stuff aloud. There's like a professional who did it and everything. It's great. Yes. Do I see? I'm very confused. I'm getting mixed signals. Yes. Person in, yes, who are you pointing at? Polaroid shirt. Okay. I would say it's a little bit of both. I found myself writing him as if he was depressed, and I was like, oh, like this is something I need to be writing more intentionally about, and then I did make it more deliberate. but I tend to write by the seat of my pants, so I don't always know what I'm doing until I've already done it. Yes. I see in the far corner, I feel like you've been waving for a while with the kind of lightish, whitish, grayish. What am I currently reading? I actually just finished a book last night called Deposing Nathan, which comes out, I think, in May. And I haven't decided what I'm going to read next. I'm not 100%. I haven't picked my next thing yet. I actually do have an early copy that's still just like a Word doc of a book a friend wrote, and so I might read that on the plane home. We'll see. I hear shouting. That will get my attention. Yes. A movie that I thought was better than the book. I have to think about that. I do, I did go to film school, and so I appreciate them as kind of different media. So I tend not to compare books to movies very often, but I'm sure there are ones that were like better put together and make more sense. But I'll have to think about that and see if I can come up with an answer.
Right here.
Yes. In a way, they do get to be the author, but at least when I was in film school, and this may have changed, but I somehow doubt it, is that you as the screenwriter are the first person to get to put the words on the page, and after that, the director and the actors and the producers can all basically override you, because once they've bought the screenplay from you, it's theirs to do with as they choose. Actors can change things on the day. Directors can jettison entire scenes. Producers can say that this part didn't test well with our focus group, and so we're going to rework it. Films are really made in their edit in big ways, and so that's all out of a screenwriter's hand. And unless you get to be like a writer, producer, director, which takes a lot of capital, it can be really hard to see your vision through to the end in the way that you can with the book. One or two more questions. Yes. Oh, I'm paralyzed with indecision. Right. Okay. Well, you're right in front of me, so I'm gonna go with the black shirt. So that's actually a very appropriative term, and very disrespectful to Native Americans, and so we don't say that anymore. We say Patronus, because then we can borrow from J.K. Rowling. My Patronus is Patrick Stewart. Okay. Yes. I see in a black coat. What's a piece of literature that's touched me emotionally or changed the way I think? That's a really good one. I'm going to tell you one that this may be kind of a curveball, but there is a podcast, and I do count narrative podcasts as literature, called The Adventure Zone. Has anyone ever heard The Adventure Zone? It's three brothers and their dad playing Dungeons and Dragons, and they started it out as a joke, and it ended up going for like 2 years, 70 episodes, and they crafted this really beautiful narrative about friendship and found families, and it absolutely kind of changed the way I see writing and the way I see narrative, and also made me insanely angry that they basically crafted this amazing story on their first try when I spent so many years like writing and revising books and writing bad stuff. Yes. No one's cutting me off, so we'll go on this side now. What's my take on what? What's my take on sports? Oh, I mean, I'm from Kansas City. We are occasionally good at sports. I'm not a very competitive person, so I tend to like the sports where you don't have to like compete against each other. Yes, I think I'm getting the shepherd's crook. Right? Yeah. Thank you all very much.
Come on up and say hi. We have copies of Darius for sale also, $18, but you can just come up and say hi, take a picture, whatever you want to do. Thanks for being a great audience, second hour.